welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria and I am so sorry that this lighting is so atrocious. My light in my bedroom that I normally film with is still broken, and so I have to work with what I have, but I had a bunch of things to do earlier today, and so I didn't get a chance to film when the natural light was brighter. So it's a little cloudy. It's almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's a little dark outside. There's not as much natural light as I would have liked, so I'm really sorry about that. We're just gonna work with what we have. Hopefully my light will get fixed by later videos, but right now this is all we got. Basically, for this video, I decided that a fun video that I can do is one that I've actually done before, and that is to read 1-star reviews of 5-star books of mine. I just think that they're so fun and I love watching them, so I wanted to do them. And obviously I'm going to do different books than I did last time, but I will link the previous video down below if you wanted to see those. But right now I'm literally just gonna like have my phone out. I'm just gonna go to some Goodreads and look up some of my favorite books and read 1-star reviews of them. Hope that makes sense. I think all the ones that I did last year were like ones that I read last year or previously, so let's do all 5 stars that I read this year. So one recent 5-star that I had was The Wolf and the Wildflower by Stacy Reed. This is a historical about a heroine who has actually been raised her entire life as a man. Everyone in the world thinks that she's a man. The only people who actually know that she is a woman are her mother and her maid. Basically, this heroine has grown her entire life with the privileges of being a man, which means that she has gone to school, gone to college, she has a career, and she is a psychologist, and just like her father is. When I think he's a duke. When a duke has been found after many years on his own, he had been lost in the Canadian wilderness. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. He gets found, but obviously after like, I think it's 5 years living alone in the Canadian wilderness, he's a little changed. His mother, the Dowager Duchess, hires the heroine and her father as psychologists to help get the Duke ready for presentation back into society. The Duke and the heroine end up having a romance. The Duke has very heightened senses and he's able to tell that the heroine is actually a woman, and it's a really amazing romance. I loved it so much. So let's just go through and see if I can find a couple of 1-star reviews that are interesting. So this first one that I see says, "Girl, I am begging, think about describing where people are and how they got there a little better. A man cannot be up in a treehouse during one line of dialogue and then down on the ground the next with no explanation or description. Is he teleporting?" I don't remember this specific scene. I know there's a scene where they're up in a treehouse, but I guess it's just assumed that he moved. I think it's interesting what makes people give 1 star, because I think that this is not something that would ever bother me, especially if it's just one scene. And also I listen to the audiobooks, and so I wonder if that's a different, having a different reading experience, if like things like that don't stand out as much to me. So that'd be really interesting interesting thing to discuss with a group of readers. Like, what are things that bother you while you're reading? What are things that will lead you to give a 1-star review? Because this 1-star review doesn't say anything else about like why they didn't like the book. So is that the only thing that they didn't like about it? It's really fascinating to me. This next one says, "Oh my goodness, this was so bad. Where do I begin? This was Pulp Fiction at its worst. Sorry, I don't like my sexual experiences to be over-described right down to the bud. Get on with it already. How many times do we have to read about her burning loins and wet thighs? There was no elegance anywhere. It was unadulterated trash, totally unbelievable and highly predictable. These characters were one-dimensional, and well, that's enough. If this is your jam, have at it. Obviously, it wasn't mine." This person had some feelings. Jeez. Let's break this down a little bit. So she says, "This was Pulp Fiction at its worst." I don't really know what they mean by that. Does that just mean that they're like overly descriptive? Interesting. I actually really love the way that Stacy Reed writes. It's one of the things that I really love about her. I think that the connections between her characters are really amazing. So I actually really love the way that she writes her characters. So I don't think that they were one-dimensional, especially these ones, which I feel like were overly described because of the circumstances that they were in. Like, the hero in this one had so much backstory to him. I feel like they did create a very interesting character and more than just like a one-dimensional type of ideal. The same thing with the heroine. She had so much backstory because of the way that she was raised and because being raised as a man. And so I really loved the way that the characters came together. So I think it's fascinating, again, how people have such different experiences when they're reading. I like this one though. I love how much feeling this person writes with. Okay, a lot of the other ones are just like 1 star without any review. I feel like it's really rough to review a book 1 star without having anything written there. So let me know down in the comments. Are you often a 1-star reviewer? Let's do a beloved book from this year, The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is a fantasy romance book about a heroine who has a chronic illness. She has a joint issue and she wants to go into the scribe sector, but her mother is a highly regarded captain of the war, and her mother forces her to join Basgiath War College, where they train military soldiers, and so she ends up having to deal with going through this war college and getting paired as a dragon rider. I really, really loved this book. I loved the heroine Violet. I thought that the way that it went was so interesting. The hero, or who we assume is going to be the hero, was very, very cool. He had so much interesting aspects to his character because there's so much about him that we don't know, and yet the things that we do know are so like blaring. So I did actually read this book for a reading vlog, so I'll link that reading vlog down below if you want to hear my full thoughts on this book. But I did absolutely adore this book, and it's a very, very popular one this year, but it is a little bit polarizing because a lot of people, with a book that's so hyped, more people are going to read it, so you're going to get more people who don't like it as well. Let's see some reviews. These ones might hurt because Violet I really, really loved. Okay, this one says, there's a valuable lesson to be learned here, and it's when you see the entire Goodreads community read and 5-star the same book, you run as fast as you can in the other direction. I especially enjoyed the mediocre writing, boring love story, and the this might as well happen plot, where an allegedly frail and weak character is at the same time overpowered as fuck and gets everything handed to her on a silver platter. 0 stars. Jesus. I usually fall into the hype. Let's start with that. I usually fall into the hype. I love a good hyped book. I think that there's usually a reason why books are hyped, and I am somebody who rates on enjoyment, and so I tend to really enjoy more hyped books. I think there's a reason why a lot of books are hyped. I do think that not everyone is going to love the same book, but I tend to really love books that are very popular. I do know that there's a lot of people who hate to read hyped books, and I do know how awkward it can be when you don't like a book that's hyped. It can be very difficult because you're like having a conversation, especially if you're a content creator, and so somebody will be talking to you and be like, oh my god, did you love this book? And I'll be like, ooh, I actually didn't. Or can you please talk about this book? And you're like, oh, I didn't like it. So you don't want to bring that negative heat onto a book. So again, it's just another one of those conversations of how interesting it is to be a reader and to have discussions with other readers and have reading the exact same book, the exact same words in it, and have 2 entirely different reactions to it. Okay, so this part of it I really take offense to, which is an allegedly frail and weak character is at the same time overpowered as fuck and gets everything handed to her on a silver platter. I don't like the wording of that. It gives me very ableist energy. The heroine in this one suffers from a chronic illness. It is hard to live life as somebody with a chronic illness, but that doesn't mean that you're incapable of doing things. She's not, it means that she has to work harder than other people. I just don't like the energy that that's written in. However, the gets everything handed to her on a silver platter, I don't see that in the book. I'm confused by that part because she does get beaten down a lot and she ends up having to stand up for herself or work harder or deal with the fact that she's gonna get punched in the face over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. But she doesn't get handed to her, nothing gets handed to her at all. She works for every single thing that she gets at that school, especially because her mother basically tries to kill her by sending her into this college in the first place. So interesting reaction there, buddy. This one just says Xaden wears skinny jeans. That's hilarious. That's your 1-star reason? That's so funny. Oh my god, I love that review. Oh my gosh. This one says, the secondhand embarrassment, girl, get up, set back women's rights by a century. Okay, this is another one. The heroine has a chronic illness. She has to work harder. And she gets beaten down a lot. That is the whole point of the book. Like, that is the whole, her character gets beaten down a lot, but she's able to get back up. She's somebody who has never had fighting experience. So of course, when she enters this college where other people are like trained fighters, she's gonna get beaten down a bunch. Although I will say it was very hard to read at times for her being so in pain and everything. I did struggle a little bit with that. I don't understand this review. It says, I'm so tiny. I'll put it on the screen. It has a bunch of emojis. It has a chick and an egg. It has like the sad-faced one, a Band-Aid one, a milk bottle, and then the one that goes like this. I have no idea what that means. If you know what that means, let me know down in the comments because that's very confusing to me. This review says it's giving published fan fiction. I love fan fiction, and I don't understand where the idea of fan fiction means that it's bad came from. There are some fan fictions that I've read that are so much better written than some of the published books out there. And I mean like traditionally published books out there. Fan fiction is amazing. Amazing. Take something like Manacled by Senlin Yu, for example. That book is a fucking masterpiece, and it blows my mind that she is just a regular ass person who's not have an editor, doesn't have anything. She just wrote that shit. That's amazing. And there are so many fan fictions out there that are like that. And there are a lot of authors who write fan fiction under a different name. So I just don't understand where the idea of like bad fan fiction equals bad came from. This one says, it's ridiculous how bad this was, like utterly baffling, but I wasn't wasting $30, so it was an entertaining hate read. I do that sometimes. Do you do that where you read a book but you don't like it, but you continue to read it because you paid for it and you're like, I have to finish it even though I don't like it because I paid for it? I do that, so I'm sorry that this person had to deal with that. Okay, let's switch to a different book. Let's do an alien romance. I bet you the 1-star reviews for alien romances are really fun. So let's do Choosing Theo. I loved that one this year. Choosing Theo by Victoria Aveline is about a heroine who gets kidnapped from Earth and she gets dropped on this planet, but the people who kidnap her, she escapes from, and then she finds these good aliens, and she finds out that they can't send her home because the laws of the planet are that when somebody comes to their planet from a different planet, they have to stay there for a year to learn each other's culture, and so she ends up having to get married because that's the custom on the planet. This one says, why does this book have such a high rating? There's absolutely nothing original about it. Such a basic plot. Ugh, why is it so hard to find an interesting sci-fi romance where it isn't all about sex right from the beginning? The style of writing with simple sentence structure is so boring. English isn't my first language and I don't look up at least a couple words while reading a book. I doubt the author's abilities. Well, that's rough. Damn. Okay. I loved this book. I loved this book, and I actually think that this one had a really good steam energy or spice energy than some of the others, because I do know that there are a lot of alien romances where they like get right to the spice, but this one I actually really, really loved the way the pacing went with the steam. So I disagree with your rating. I'm sorry. This one just says, these are some of the most unlikable characters I've encountered in a while. Well, to each their own. I loved them. This one's 1 star, and their entire review says, I read this for a book club. I would love to be at that book club and you hear the differences of opinion for a book like this at a book club. I always wanted to be part of a book club, but a lot of the book clubs that are like around my town or like were in my school, they never read the books that I wanted to read. So they always read like fiction, women's fiction or nonfiction books, and I didn't care about that, or like political ones. And I was just like, where's the book club where they read like Ice Planet Barbarians? Because that's my shit. I just think it would be fascinating. So much more interesting like discussions. This one says, I read this after watching Avatar and that still isn't a good excuse. That is a great review. I love that review. That's funny. Let's look at, this review just says only regrets. Ooh. Oh, some of these are so fun. Okay, let's switch to another book. I don't love any of the other reviews. Let's do, I think Not All Himbos Wear Capes would have really interesting reviews on it. That is a MM romance between superhero and a supervillain. That one would be a fun one. If I had $1 for every time I had to change my battery while I was filming, I could afford my absolute dream library. So I'm sorry if the angle changed. You know the drill at this point. How many times have my battery died while I'm filming? Good thing I have a backup. All right, like I was saying, let's do Not All Himbos Wear Capes. So I have it queued up with the reviews. Let's go for it. So this one says, I was promised Sin City and the boys having a love child with extra spicy Spidey pool, and I was given The Incredibles with like a dash of black pepper, you know, for spice. That is the best review that oh my gosh, The Incredibles with a dash of black pepper for spice. Oh my god, that is how I'm gonna describe this book from now on. That is hilarious. That's hilarious. Oh my god, I love that. That might be my favorite review from this whole video. Okay, this next one says, I was hoping it was going to be like my other 2 all-time favorite superhero books. Alas, it was not on the same level at all. The morally gray characters made me sick. Torturing or killing people is not morally gray. Get it straight. It was disgusting to read about 2 of them fantasizing and acting upon their murderous desires. Girl, it's fiction. To each their own. I loved this book. I think it was so fun. Do they kill people? Yes. One of them is literally a supervillain. That's literally in the job description of a supervillain. So get it straight. This one says, they are written too dumb for my taste. Book 3 sounded super exciting, so I thought I'd start from book 1, but I worry it's the author's writing style that is just dumb and unfunny. It's like a children's cartoon with dumb characters trying to be sexy and failing. The high ratings make no sense. That's a funny one too. I knew that there would be really fun ones for Not All Himbos Wear Capes. That's funny. I actually liked this author's writing style. It was definitely a little bit different than other books that I've read. When I described this one, I described it as kind of like the energy of a fan fiction, but like in the best way. And that doesn't mean that the writing is bad in any way. Like I just said, I think some fan fictions are absolutely amazing. But what I mean by that is more like the energy of it. It felt like it was like being built on something that you already knew. I obviously loved this because I gave it 5 stars, but the writing was definitely different. It was, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was different. So I could see why some people might not like it. Let's do one last book because I've already been filming for a while now. Let's do a Mafia. I feel like that is another one that would have different polarizing reviews. What's a Mafia that I loved this year? Ooh, Brutal Vows by J.T. Geisinger. That's book 4 in the Queens and Monsters series, and I didn't love book 1. I liked book 2, I loved book 3, and I loved book 4. And I read book 4 this year, and it's the hero who is Irish from the Irish Mafia, and he's the like right-hand man of the head of the Irish Mafia, and he is being put into an arranged marriage, and he's supposed to marry the 18-year-old daughter of the head of the Italian Mafia, but the 18-year-old daughter of the head of the Italian Mafia does not want to be married to him. He's like, absolutely not. That's not what's gonna happen. But she doesn't really have a lot of choice, but he ends up falling for and end up marrying her aunt, who is more his age. She's a badass. She is a widow who apparently killed her husband. She is awesome and badass, and I loved her. Her name is Raina, I believe. And I loved this romance. The hero, I think's name is Spider, and it was so good. This one says, a male main character being previously in love with another woman isn't my cup of tea. Was he in love with somebody else? I don't even remember that. I don't even remember him being in love with somebody else, so it obviously didn't bother me. But I can see how that could bother somebody in some other things, but obviously these characters are not young. Like, people have previous lives. Like, they're not like young. They're in their 30s. I think they're in their like late 30s. So I don't know why they wouldn't have had previous pasts. So it didn't bother me. This review just says corny with like 4 Ys. That's funny. This one says DNF. Do you 1-star your DNFs? Because I don't rate my DNFs. If I mark them as read on Goodreads, I don't read them. So let me know down in the comments, do you rate your DNFs? Because obviously if I DNF'd it, I didn't like it. This one says, I'm sorry, I just cannot. Do you know what this book feels like? The mafia version of Bridgerton, Antony's storyline to be exact. I hate that storyline just like I hate this one. It doesn't help that Spider was so likable in book 2 and then so freaking annoying in book 3. It made me uninvested in his storyline altogether. Overall, I'm disappointed in this and would have preferred to have more details into the continuation of the other couple stories. I love JT, but this one just wasn't for me. Okay, so I do remember the hero had a crush on somebody else. So the hero in this one, Spider, had a crush on the heroine from book 3. He didn't really love her though. He barely knew her, but he had a crush on her. That's what she's talking about. Okay, so that's what the other previous one was talking about. The mafia version of Bridgerton is funny though. That's a great... Antony, okay, so Antony's storyline in Bridgerton is that he doesn't want to get married to somebody that he loves. And in this one, Spider is being arranged to marry, like to join families. So I feel like it's different, a different situation. This review says this series just got worse over time for me. That's so interesting because this series actually got better over time for me. I did not like book 1. I think I gave it 3 stars. It was not for me, it was very boring. And then book 2 I gave 4 stars, and then book 3 and 4 I gave 5 stars. So that's really interesting that some people liked the earlier ones more than this one. So, okay, I've been filming for like 100 years, so I think that's the last one we're gonna do. I don't see any more fun 1-star reviews for Brittle Vows, so I think that's what we're going to end on. This was just a chatty video. I just thought that it would be fun to sit down and do something quick, easy, enjoyable, and just have a conversation about 1 stars and 5 stars and books I love and how people rate books. So like it if you liked it, subscribe, stick around, see more content from me. But that's gonna be it, so I hope you have the absolute best day. Bye.